Hello, I'm Ryan Reyes.
And I'm Dominic Angel.
And I'm Ricky Macias.
And together we are Un Poquito. My leg.
Learning about Latino culture little by little.
Un Poquito. Learning about Latino culture little by little.
If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for joining us. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, leave a comment. Comments make you sexy, all right? You can follow us on social media at Un Poquito Pod on Instagram and TikTok. Also, we're on Twitter. Send us an email at unpoquitopod@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us, we appreciate all of our supporters. We have a Patreon. Links are in the description. And if you guys want on the scene, up-to-date information, the best place to reach us is on Discord. It's free to join, and links are in the description.
Also, if you're listening on an audio platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, rate and review us. Follow us there. 5 stars, please.
And yeah, that's all we have to take care of. Today, exciting episode. We
Great.
just
Awesome episode.
we just got back from hanging out in Riverside, but they're not from Riverside. Why don't we cut to it and welcome our guest from Todo Chido. Thank you for being here. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
What's up? What's up? So, my name is Steve.
I'm Jalissa.
And I'm Brandon.
And we are Everything's Cool podcast. We don't have a sign like them. Yeah. It's cool, man. We're happy to be here. Having a good time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I was like super stoked. I saw you guys on TikTok, and I forgot which clip it was exactly. I think it was the Edgar clip.
Might have been.
I seen a couple of your clips pop up. And then I had reached out to you guys like, I fucking love what you guys are doing. Let's collab. And you guys were really cool.
Check out our episode with Dom, actually.
Oh, yeah. I was a guest on
Yeah,
the
he was
podcast.
a guest.
It was a lot of fun. Talked about drugs.
My favorite subject.
Yeah.
No, it was really cool. Like I said, I love what you guys are doing. It's cool to see. I feel like there's, right now is still like the Latino Renaissance. And I feel like you guys are entering that this like field.
It's like realm.
Yeah,
meeting a lot of
realm.
interesting people. Never knew this community existed, and it's cool. It's cool to see everybody, different shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
So like, where you guys are originally from LA? Do you mind if I ask like how old you guys are? Like, how did you guys get started?
Well, I'm 24.
I'm 26.
And I'm 22.
Yeah, so there's like a 2 years age gap. So during the pandemic, me and Brandon have been friends since we were like 5 years old.
Yeah, we went to the same school since kindergarten.
Yeah, and then I've known my sister like my whole life. So since there was nothing to do because of the pandemic, just being like totally candid, basically we would just get high all the time. And then my sister, when she was in college, she made a friend. Shout out to Danny. Who he actually wanted a career in radio. So as my sister graduated and so did Danny, Danny had started working down at like a radio station called TGN, the Good News Network, and they opened up a branch for Latinos, and just coincidentally around that same time, my sister reconnected with him. We invited him over to the backyard, and we weren't like really trying to do anything. Like
we were just hanging out.
Yeah, we were just hanging out, and we invited Danny to hang out with us. He thought we were really funny. A few months later, when TGN Latin X fully like opened up, they needed some talent. So Danny hit us up and was like, "Do you guys want to audition?" We did the auditions. They liked us. They gave us a show, and we were born. Yeah,
Nice.
Pretty much.
just been riding that wave for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never really planned it. We kind of just fell into it.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely it kept getting more and more serious in terms of like who we met, the effort we put in and all that stuff.
The audience.
None of us really ever saw this coming, but yeah.
Yeah, we would like joke around in the backyard, like, oh, like we should have like a podcast or like a YouTube show, but we never really we never recorded it. We never like put a structure behind it.
Yeah, even like our audition tape, I guess, because when I guess I only applied, my friend was still like, can you send in like an audio? And we were like, we don't even have anything.
Just like set up a phone while you guys were-
we legit, again, we were in the backyard and we were just high. And then I told my brother, I was like, he was just like, he wants us to like send in something.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were like, well, we don't have anything. So then I just took out my phone and I just recorded something. And then we did kind of like an ad, but at the same time we started talking about like other stuff. And then we were like, okay, like that's it. It was just, I don't even know how long it was.
Are we talking about like cartoons?
No, yeah. I think if I have to like really think about it or give it some thought, it's not that I didn't try. It was more like I didn't expect like them to at all take us. So I wasn't like I just, the way I was talking, I was like, well, it's not like they're gonna pick us anyway. So so I think I came off more genuine because I wasn't trying to like impress them. So I think that's kind of what they liked about us.
And low
maybe.
key, our pitch, we like actually came up with it on the way to like the drive there.
This is like a Un Poquito exclusive. I don't think we've ever said that on camera. On the drive there, we came up with the name and like the pitch for what our show would be. Like on the drive to the audition.
Wait, so what's the pitch?
It was like we were saying that we were for outsiders and punks and like.
Well, it was also saying like we want to speak on things that I guess some people at the time, like at our age, don't give like their perspectives because they're always put down of like, oh, you're this age, so why does your kind of your idea matter? And we were like, we want to speak on things that like people don't talk about. So at the time, you know, during the pandemic, when people are like, don't get political, but it's like, it's an everyday thing as like a citizen, right? Or as us, right? It's our age where you can see that a lot of the older folks are the ones who vote, but yet people our age aren't doing that. And why is it that it's not being talked about?
And like people our age are like, a lot of people our age like are very outspoken about issues, but are the ones that like least likely to actually like do something for, right? But we also told them that like we thought our perspective was unique because for a lot of podcasts, it's either an all gender, like it's either all women or all guys, but we had my sister here, and a lot of people don't feel as comfortable talking about certain things around their siblings as like I do with my sister. And I thought it was cool that our age gaps too were like very different. We each have 2 years in between, so sometimes I feel like when my sister's talking to Brandon, like it's such a huge age gap, so it's funny to see them argue about certain things because you could tell it's just different like ways of seeing the issue.
And then the name is just like
well, it was an old name. We used to be called something else.
Yeah, we used to be called something else, and then we kind of just are now Todo Chido.
Yeah. I like Todo. I always
you can say Todo Chido.
No, it's a dope name. Topo Chico. You did the radio show for how long? Like a year?
A year and a half.
A little
over a year. And so your new podcast has been around for like 4 or 5 months.
1 month.
1 month?
Well,
we started
January.
in January. Well,
like
technically,
mid-January.
Oh wow! That's really cool. I thought you had been doing it for a little bit longer, so you guys are like super. Oh, yeah, I mean that makes sense because my episode is the 4th episode.
You're like that 4. What does that mean?
That's at least one a week.
Because we stopped the radio around December, and then we took like a kind of a break for like the holidays to like start the new show, and then in January is where we kind of like everything kind of came out.
You guys are really on like the forefront, like. Yeah, that's exciting, honestly, because like I said, like I really enjoyed like your guys' podcast. Like I watched the episodes, the first 3. I don't know why I didn't realize I watched it. I was leading up to it. But no, it's cool because like I told you guys when I recorded with you that like I don't really listen to roundtable podcasts, like people just like chewing the fat. But I did like your guys's like your format of like really like casual conversations because it does feel, you know, people are like, oh, listening to your podcast feels like I'm hanging out with my cousins, like I don't know why I did that. I'm sorry, I'm not making fun of anybody. Thank you for listening to my podcast. It's a thing we hear a lot, and it's hard to imagine, but now that I think that's what it is that now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, oh, this is cool, because I feel like a lot of roundtable podcasts are just like people not really saying anything. There's no real substance, and like listening to you guys and your conversations, it's like it really is conversations that we would have, that we do have, like outside of doing the podcast, like just hanging out and like dissecting like social issues, or even just like making like random ass jokes and like just hanging out. So it is cool to see that, and I was excited. I'm always like, when I see young people doing, I mean, I'm 31. I'm not old. But it was exciting to see, especially that we did Isimo, because we had a similar experience when we started Isimo, was that it like took off right away. So it's kind of like, I know what is in store for you guys, and like I'm super excited for that, because it's going to be cool. And like I said, it was just exciting to see like, oh, like young people are talking about this. Kind of, it gives me some validation of like what we're doing, like the mission that we have, I guess. You know, so I just wanted to say that before we continue, is like, I highly recommend everybody watching or listening check out Todo Chido, and we'll have the links and everything, but it's a good time.
He said it. You got it.
But yeah, it is interesting because we have some age gaps here. I'm the oldest as far as like, I guess, part of the cast now. This is all newer to me. Like I've like been a guest on a podcast here and there, and they pulled me in to be more in part of this. It's still like, I'm still like getting used to saying I'm part of this. But it's interesting because it's like we're like a little older, but it's also like we still have varying points of view and varying experiences. Because it's also something I was curious about, since you guys are from LA, and we're kind of, I don't know, is Baldwin Park San Gabriel Valley still?
San Gabriel Valley, yeah.
So we're all in the San Gabriel Valley, so our experiences are just the same but different from your guys's.
A huge part of what drove us to make a podcast in the first place was like kind of searching for that sort of self-validation within the community and creating something where people felt comfortable to speak their minds. Because that kind of goes into the topic of today of like people, older generations and communities specifically, but in general, like not supporting the younger generations.
Hey everybody, we want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Legacy Teas and Spices, which is a company run by our mom, Angel Mesco, who's here with us today.
Hey guys.
Normally me and Ryan give you the spiel, but today we're going to let my mom tell you about her teas, so why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention we have several medicinal teas in stock. A lot of people have been asking. A lot of people have New Year's resolutions that they're working on, so we have tea to help. And so I just wanted to mention we have an immune system to help boost your immune system. We have a stress-free tea. We have a good night tea that helps with sleep. We have turmeric ginger that helps with inflammation. We have a detox that's a cleansing tea. We have a digestive aid. We also have a weight management tea. We're all trying to get healthy right now, and with a proper diet and some exercise, these teas can really help you out. We have different sizes, and today we're holding up, this is like a starter size. It's a $12.95, but with your code you get the discount, and this can give you about 12 servings, give or take, depending on how much you use. But this is all artisan, hand blended by myself. And yeah, we have many flavors. Check out our website. Using UP23 at checkout so that we know you came from watching Un Poquito podcast. It gets them 23% off their entire purchase online at legacyteasandspices.com. All right, thanks you guys. Thanks for having me. Thanks you guys.
Everybody's heard about, we've been talking all week, like in private, about what happened with George Lopez and Ralph Barbosa. So like, if for the people that haven't seen it, Steve Trevino was a guest on George Lopez's podcast, and George Lopez is essentially like, fuck that, fuck like mentorship. Who even has heard of this Ralph person? Like, I did it all on my own, and like, I'm the best at what I do. I laid the foundation, and fuck everybody else.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty heated on social media.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I see it on Instagram. I see it on TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what you guys say, especially like because I feel like it's in that realm of like comics.
Comedy? Yeah.
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 I always thought that there was a very funny mentality of like, I paved the road, but fuck anybody using it. Like,
Yeah. Well, you hear the was it crab theory or crab mentality?
Crabs in a bucket.
Yeah, crabs in a bucket. So for the people that have heard it a bunch and don't know what it is, there's this thing where like if you put a bunch of crabs into a bucket, they're all trapped, and it's like a thing. It's like a phenomenon where if any of the crabs, they're all trying to get out, but if any one of them gets close to getting out, then another one will pull them back in, and like keep them from leaving the bucket. So like they don't even have to like try to do it. Like they just literally keep in a bucket.
They're just pulling at anything, and it hurts the other ones. Like, yeah, they're just taking the other ones down.
Right.
Whether it's intentional or not, it's
Yeah,
happening.
it could just be they're all just trying to grab at stuff and get out. So,
Yeah.
But what the effect is that they're all being trapped in the bucket. So it's that mentality. It's the scarcity mentality of like, I understand a part of it that George Lopez comes from an era where there really was just like 2 or 3 Mexican comics, Latino comics of his era. And so it was hard. I think the issue, Paul Rodriguez talks about it. He had talked about it a while back on Felipe Esparza's podcast that I saw a clip of, where the difference in what George Lopez historically allegedly has done and what he's doing now in this moment is preventing other people from moving up. Like that's like there's a thing that when he started getting big enough where he could play like casinos and clubs and stuff, he would put it in his contract that while he was performing, like while he was under contract at this venue, that they couldn't book any other Latino comics because he could be the only one.
Really?
Yeah.
And I mean, I hate to say it, but that kind of like is like a tell of like the quality of his material.
Yeah.
Where if you're afraid that somebody's gonna like
Any Latino could take it.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're afraid that someone's gonna step on your material, that you have to ban them from performing, then you probably need to
Like I've never verified this other part, but there's another part for even his shows on TV. He would have no Latino writers at all, even in the writers' room.
because he's afraid of one of them reaching success and then passing them up.
Like not even writers, not even just exclude comics and writers
Right.
that are Latino.
And it was
I did not know that.
what was interesting what was interesting is that when the whole Joe Rogan stuff was going down with Carlos Mencia calls out George Lopez for saying George Lopez has said he doesn't want any other Latino comics to succeed. And at the time, we don't have to get into Carlos Mencia, but like at the time, everybody like discounted what he said, like dismissed what he was saying because he was being accused of stealing. But like for him saying that, and now that it's like, I feel like George Lopez has shown himself time and again, but it hasn't been so public. I think that's what the most interesting part of this thing is, that he's always been like this fucking La Raza character, you know, and like a lot of his material is like, be proud to be Mexican. I think he wants to be this beacon of hope for like Mexicans. I'm not going to be like, oh, I know everything, because I only recently in the last few months learned about Ralph. We're on first name terms now. I only recently learned about him, but for you to be like, well, who has even heard of this fucking guy? And like to just like try to like be like, fuck him, I'm not gonna help him. Like,
Yeah.
like,
I mean, like, even if you've never heard of him, it's like he has an HBO. I think it's on HBO, right? And then it's like he's blowing up on social media. People are sharing his posts, and like he's just has success now.
Yeah.
And it's like, who's this fool? Like who are you? Who who are you to just?
he's a fucking cop on his podcast.
Yeah.
No, yeah, he just did Jimmy Fallon, right?
Ralph.
Yeah,
Ralph
which-
Barbosa.
Yeah. No, yeah, I thought he was really funny. I was really getting into him, and I was pretty shocked to see George Lopez say that, because I was kind of looking for like, I guess a joke. Like I thought he was like gonna make a joke about it, or because it's not like all he said was his name, you know. He just said his name, and then he's like, "Don't say that. Like nobody knows what the fuck that is." You know?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
pretty
he really
ugly. You
blew
know?
it.
It's like,
It was like he was bitter.
yeah, there was like,
Yeah. It's also to think you have competition with Ralph Barbosa.
Yeah.
And like the stage that you're at now, like, I mean, there's a thing where as comics get older, you want to include look at somebody that's not even in comedy, like somebody like Jay-Z, right?
Yeah.
Jay-Z is considered one of the greatest rappers of all time, and I think he achieved that by not to discredit his actual talent as a rapper, but the thing that he did was he put himself in positions to where he doesn't have to show like faltering, like he doesn't have he started a record label, he started other enterprises, and became a prominent figure in that way. And then he put out, an album every now and then, and it's kind of like a big deal when he puts out an album, but it still doesn't really resonate with the majority of like the youth of today. And the same thing with Steve Martin, like he talks about in his book, where he quit comedy. He quit doing comedy shows when he started to see the decline of tickets, of like, he started to see empty seats, and he was like, all right, well, this is the peak of this. So like, I'm going to go out on top and always be considered like a great comic. And I feel like George Lopez kind of did that, but he failed to keep himself relevant in a way. And I think a big part of that is not mentoring somebody, because if you look at a lot of the greats, they've always mentored somebody. Eddie Murphy, helped out Chris Rock. Chris Rock helps out a lot of younger comedians. Jay-Z is like helped out people. Like it's always a thing of like you kind of stay in touch with the culture by mentoring people.
Yeah, even Dave Chappelle, like a lot of the comedians that would become more prominent on Comedy Central after his show ended were originally, like, they started out as writers for him.
Yeah, Bill Burr.
Yeah.
Neil, what's his name?
Neil Brennan.
Neil Brennan. Yeah, it's a thing, I think, of how people stay relevant. I mean, and even Bill Burr is somebody now who has multiple shows. I mean, he started All Things Comedy Network with...
Right.
And there's comics we're adjacent to or familiar with that we've seen open for Bill Burr. Like, this is just a natural... It's just interesting that George Lopez just said it, matter of fact, like, fuck everybody else, don't help anybody. But it's also like the rest of all these other comedians of every ethnicity and gender and religion and creed do help. And he's like, no, my way was the right way.
I feel like it's weirdly something that's like more cultural than I feel like George Lopez himself. Like because I've seen even Canelo talks about it, about how a lot of the boxers in Mexico, like a lot of them do not communicate, which is why he wanted to keep a good relationship with Ryan Garcia, because he's Mexican American. So I think it's weird that like it has to do something more with like in our culture that probably gets the older generation to kind of like be against newer thoughts. I thought about it kind of what you said about how I think George Lopez is projecting his insecurity as like wanting to be seen as Mexican. And so it's like he's kind of protecting that, like, no, I'm the Mexican guy. Like when people look at Mexican identity, they say me. And they don't want other people to show up because he'll feel like it'll make him feel less of his identity.
I think that Ralph himself like had the perfect analogy for the vibe he got from that clip, because he posted on Instagram and then he posted a clip from an Al Pacino movie
From Carlito's Way.
Yeah, where he's talking to
John Leguizamo,
John
Benny
Leguizamo.
Blanco from the Bronx.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't fucking know you. I don't remember you. I don't remember the last time I took a shit. And then it ends with him getting killed by that guy.
It's just so funny because it just shows how out of touch George Lopez is, because Ralph Barbosa is not anything like
Yeah.
what he's doing. If you look at what he's doing, it's like he's doing something totally different in his
Yeah.
own voice.
Yeah.
Where it's like just the fact that he's Mexican or he's Latino, you're gonna say fuck him.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Because he's not doing. I wouldn't consider. He talks. He has a particular accent.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
he has a look. He has the Edgar
Yeah.
cut
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
But he his comedy is not like.
They're
It's-
not
it-
similar.
It's
He's
not
a lot.
Latino
It's,
comedy.
yeah, because comparing it to the way George Lopez does stand up, it's like all kind of just about being Mexican, right?
Right.
But Ralph Barbosa is just more like a comic, right? He's just doing it about his life, his experience. Every now and then he throws in like some stories about being like
Right.
Mexican
Which
American.
anybody can do.
Yeah, but I feel like that's why it was so weird to me because to George Lopez to be mad at that guy, like it's so weird because the comedies are so different. Like your style is so much different than his.
I think I wonder because it comes off as maybe George Lopez really just didn't know who this guy was and didn't realize how loved he is.
Yeah.
Because it's like even the people that see him now, like that are just learning about, like there's people genuinely love this guy.
Yeah.
Like he's very likable. I don't know anything about him, but like you see the comments, like and you see the support that people are having for him, and like people are pulling for him. Like I don't know if he had like of trauma or something in his past, but it's like people really want him to succeed. They're really excited to see him perform, and maybe George Lopez really didn't know who he was. It seems like it was pointed, like it just
Yeah.
the way that he just like don't say his name, like
Nobody knows who that
Immediate-
motherfucker is. That's what he
Yeah.
said.
it's like he's upset that like I guess because I mean really the only other Latinos that I could think of that were like coming up are
Dominic Angel.
I was like waiting to hear my name.
Chris Estrada.
Chris Estrada.
I mean, I know there's people from the East Coast. I think there's a dude named Kevin Mejia. I could be wrong. He's a Puerto Rican dude.
How old is he? What is his name? Ralph?
Ralph Barbosa.
Yeah,
I don't know.
how
He
old
looks
is
pretty young.
Yeah,
Looks
he
like
looks-
he is
yeah.
Mid to late 20s.
mid to late 20s probably.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's
he's, like,
maybe it's
our
also
age.
like the envy of like how
The
young
youth?
he is,
26.
of just like
Yeah.
how he's kind of making it at a young age.
I think,
Well, also George, yeah, he didn't make it at a young age. He was older.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think like when he asks, like, do people really know about this guy? That seems genuine. Like, I can see him genuinely not knowing who Ralph is, but he also had that immediate reaction, like, to this guy saying he wants to mentor people, of like, fuck that.
I don't know if it would have caught as much attention if it wasn't Ralph. Like if it was just another, like even
No, definitely. Yeah.
if Steve was just like, oh yeah, I know this guy who just started 2 years ago and I want to help him. And George Lopez was like, no, fuck that. Like he's got to learn how to do it
Well,
himself.
I guess for me, a little bit of it is like, even if he didn't know, it's like based on what the other guys. Steve, what was his name?
Steve Trevino.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with him, but like he's just saying like, oh, like, you know, I want to help people like the Ralph Barbosas of the world, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You can even if you didn't know him, you could kind of deduce from that sentiment of like, oh, you know. But it was interesting to me that his immediate like quick reaction was, stop saying that guy's name. I don't know who the fuck he is.
Exactly.
Nobody else does, you know. It's so hostile. Like all he said was his name, you know. Like he didn't say he's so funny. He didn't say I'm.
Yeah, he's better than you.
Yeah, like, he's better than you, George. No, he just said like, oh, you know, I'm a fan of this guy. You know.
I saw somebody say Sandra Bullock needs to come get her man, which is so
Yeah.
funny.
That
Do
was,
you guys know that?
that was
Seen
me.
those.
You said that? Oh,
I did say that.
that was you.
Yeah, she went to his like comedy like stand up.
Yeah.
And she was like, I really like this guy, and then that's how she came.
Yeah,
came
and
up
then
with
he
the
goes
show.
on to say, I did it by myself. Like, Sandra Bullock helped you. Like,
Yeah, a very
Whatsoever.
famous like
she
successful-
blindsided you.
yeah.
She blindsided me.
Bruh.
Sorry. He said the joke first, and mine.
Yours was
got a
louder.
laugh.
As comics, that's like the sin.
I've seen the Key and Peele sketch.
You know what the funniest thing about all of this stuff is that as Mexican performers have gained prominence, they include George Lopez to keep him relevant.
Yeah.
Fucking Cholo Fit Creeper had him on his like in a sketch. He pops
Yeah.
up in like Latino sketches.
yeah.
And he pops up in movies. Like he was in fucking El Chicano, and he was in Was he in El Chicano? I could be wrong
La
about that.
Llorona, I think too.
He was in La Llorona.
He was in one. He was like in a horror movie,
a
right?
detective.
I
know
he
he's
was
gonna
in-
be in Blue Beetle. Well, like it was big that he's gonna be in that, right? The first.
Not
time.
anymore, imagine.
Who knows?
Well, he was in that fucking Ryan Singer.
They're gonna
is it Ryan
replace him.
Singer? No, it's the dude that did Training Day, that movie that came out with Shia LaBeouf. He was in that as like a villain.
George Lopez was the villain in that movie.
He was in
He
Shark
was a-
Boy and Lava Girl as
he
the villain
was.
too.
Oh yeah,
He was.
My
method.
favorite
He was
performance.
method acting.
I was gonna say, like, you're right that like a lot of people keep him relevant, and it's weird because on the old radio show that we used to have, sometimes we talk about George Lopez, and I would bring him up as like, even though I didn't really like his comedy, I always felt like I didn't like that he played into the stereotype. Like he just kept like putting us into the stereotype.
Like in the show.
I always gave him his props that he was the only like dark skinned Mexican that I would see like in mainstream like media.
Right.
He was the only guy. So I, at least for people who keep him relevant, I can understand why they kind of do that, because he was kind of that beacon of hope for a lot of like darker skinned Mexicans.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's how I felt.
Maybe that's why he's so self-conscious, is because he was always asking if you remember, and now nobody can remember.
Now
That was a
everybody's
call for
asking,
help.
"Why you crying?"
Remember, right?
No, I grew up with me and my sister would watch George Lopez, his show,
Yeah.
like all the time.
Same.
Yeah.
We even rewatched it like recently, like last year.
Yeah, I was having a good time. He had to go and ruin it. Now I can't watch it anymore.
It sucked.
You
I mean,
found out? It's just random fan fact. If you want to verify this, but the daughter isn't even Latina.
she's Romanian.
She's Romanian.
Oh yeah.
That's that was.
Yeah,
that
that's
was, like,
why
one
I-
of the things.
Yeah, I
of,
think
like,
that's why in the
she's-
last season, yeah.
she's like light skinned or whatever, but she wasn't even like.
Yeah, they like
Latina.
replaced her with the cousin in the
Yeah.
last two
Yeah.
seasons.
Because I don't know if you saw they had a reunion of the George Lopez show and his new show.
Yeah,
I think
she
Lopez
did.
versus Lopez. She's not there, yeah, and it's because of that, like the drama from the last season. Because a lot of people complained that she wasn't actually like Latino background.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Albany.
I think
Oh,
how
just thought
people
she was
found out
Romanian.
is during the time she was also like on an episode of Law and Order, where she like plays in Albanian, and people started googling it.
Wow.
I guess so.
Come on.
He's
But-
doing that apology. You know, the thing is also, again, I don't know if I was Ralph Barbosa, I think he handled it well, and I
Yeah.
think
I don't forgive him though.
it's not a thought. Like he's like, who cares? This old man's yelling at the sun. Like,
Yeah.
like, what Josh just said, so it's on camera, is that George Lopez was immediately saying like, was that wrong to say? Like, should I not be saying this? And then for a minute, and then doubled down and was like, fuck that. But the thing is, like, it's the truth. Like what I just said is like, he already showed his colors. Like that's the mindset that he has. And I mean, you know, hopefully he does learn from this, but thinking about it, like thinking about historically, like all the projects that he's been involved with that I could think of, I'm not saying there's nothing out there, but all the projects that I could think of is other people bringing him in onto their thing. He hasn't done anything to set up like other people to help them come up, as far as I know.
Well, like so there's all that, and it happened, and he's apologized, right? But it's also like there's a pattern here. Like we're in comedy, there's a pattern of some of these older fools like being similar. Like you talked about, you know, some of the Carlos Mencia stuff, but it's like I don't know if we should name any of them, but like in the comedy scene, some of us have run into quote unquote successful older comedians that were at minimum assholes. Like,
What's that fool's name?
you want me to say it?
Nobody knows who that fool is.
I feel like I immediately know who you're
I
talking
fuck
about.
with that. That's a good
Charlie.
No.
Sheen.
Charlie Sheen. No,
Charlie's Spanish.
not Tyler. Not Tiger Blood.
Charlie.
Jeff
Sheen.
Garcia.
Jeff Garcia.
Jeff Garcia, like me and Josh Michaels used to run a mic in Monrovia. Jeff Garcia showed up. I had to leave early, but I met Jeff Garcia, and the vibe was a little off. And I remember thinking, like, you know, I wasn't that seasoned back then. It was like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's like I'm like, am I being the weird one? And he's like, successful,
Yeah.
and you know he was clearly drinking, and I left to go to like a roast battle at the Comedy Store, and apparently he went up on stage and just talked shit about the mic and the comedians there, and it's like. If this open mic is so bad, why is you a successful comedian here?
He's telling you how bad you are, but yet you're in the same place as me. Like,
Yeah. Why is Jeff Garcia of Nickelodeon fame even bothering me?
But it's like there's this pattern of like I'm not trying to also justify what they went through. Like clearly they all went through some shit.
Yeah,
For
To
sure.
be that jaded and bitter, and it's like in some ways I do understand. In some ways there were so few opportunities that they all kind of crabs in a bucket.
Yeah.
Right.
Even with any success, are trying to pull everyone down with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that's I mean, but the thing is, I get it's something I can see it, I can comprehend it, but it's still like that's you still don't have to be that way, dude. Like,
Yeah.
like we just talked about Cheech Marin. Like Cheech Marin brought all of these artists, literally gave them money for their art, and then put them in a museum for them, traveled the artwork all over the country and like showed them off. And he's also like helped out. He's a producer. He's helped out projects. John Leguizamo has helped out people. Like, it's a thing where I don't want to tell anybody how to live or how to be, but it's just like if you've experienced pain, if you experienced a certain type of struggle, why would you turn around and say, well, now it's your turn to struggle, instead of like, let me help you so you don't have to go through that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people just tend to have just that mentality because of how you said, like, I think they're like, I went through this, so I think you should also go through this. Because I think they feel like it kind of built their character. But it's kind of like, well, for example, like George Lopez, right? Like, he just didn't have anyone, right? And it's like, but for us, we are starting to have people who are there and like can inspire us or mentor us to become these people, but we're not gonna take their spots. We're just like, we're all gonna come up together,
Right.
But I feel like a lot of, I don't know if it's like mostly just, I think it is like the older generation where it's just like, because I struggled in this way and I went through these hardships, you're gonna go through the same thing because I went through those things. And I think, I mean, us as younger now, we're starting to see like, no, that's not the way it is. Like, it should be that we should all help each other because that's kind of how it uplifts, I guess, in this situation, our community, right?
Right.
And I feel like I've seen that a lot with just like the older generation. And I feel like I saw it a lot in college when it was like, for example, if you were struggling like in a class, some people wouldn't want to help you because it was like, well, I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it, so I'm not gonna help you.
Right.
Like, you're gonna see what it felt like that I went through. But I think it's like kind of like a trauma thing of like, because they went through like so much by themselves that they're like, well, I'm just gonna be stuck like that. And I feel like that's how you should learn too.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's resentment of like also like kind of crushed dreams because it was funny when the George Lopez Ralph Barbosa thing was going on the next day. I was working with my dad and this like really older like Mexican guy came to his shop. We work like at a mechanic shop. And he was telling me like, oh, do you go to school? And I was like, oh, I graduated from school. I'm trying to work like in the film industry, and then I'm doing things with my radio. And he's like, why are you doing that? Just work here full time. Like there's no reason to do all that extra stuff. Like, you get consistent pay here. And I thought it was just so ironic, like that the older generation just basically tells you to just give up and just like stick with what you got. Like there's, and it's probably comes from like obviously their dad or someone older than them when they were my age told them like, hey bro, like don't do it. And they probably did settle with that idea. So there's a lot of crushed dreams of like, then you get older and you see someone who's young and he's like, dude, like I've been where you are, and trust me, it leads you nowhere. You know?
Well, I think that's the thing. I have felt a little, not in a jealous way, but like, you guys were talking about in the Patreon episode about how like the artwork that we saw, like you're like, I should have never stopped. And I've had that feeling too. And I think part of it, like I said, I'm 31 and I just, after the pandemic, I was unemployed like until like a few months ago. And that idea, there's that safety in like, just work here. Like you won't fail. You have that stability. And now it is like, as a person that's like, I don't, it's definitely a struggle, but it is like, I'm young enough, but I'm old enough where I'm like, okay, well, something's got to happen.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel. You feel the pressure of like, something's got to happen or you're just going to have to work full time. Like it becomes less,
Fun.
not less fun. I mean, well, it becomes like less admirable to chase something the older you get. Like when you're a kid, you're like, hell yeah, they got like motivation and passion and excitement, and like they're gonna really go for it. And then it takes a little bit longer to achieve your goals, and you put it off to the side, and you do this, and then you get a side job, and then you get a full-time job, and then you get 2 jobs, and like then you become unemployed, and then you get another like. And those whole while you're not at a level where you should be, and you're seeing other people succeed and other people accomplish the goals that you have set for yourself. And so I think, it's very disheartening. I mean, also to hear that from like older people that are just like, just give up. Like, don't put yourself through that. Like, just get the stability.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's like, I guess speaking a little bit from experience, not that we're comedians or anything, but like we started off like we didn't have a show at all. You know what I mean? And I guess people like George Lopez who didn't have anything don't realize how much it means when someone bigger than you reaches out. Like our experience like with the people over at the IE, it was so cool when those people that I saw like on my TikTok before I even was in this, like who I thought were like so famous and stuff, or even you guys, when you guys like reached out to us, it's like so cool and super validating. And it's like, because it's like, wow, these people who are like way more successful than me, they like my stuff. Like they think like they think I'm like cool kind of. It's super.
If you guys were assholes, totally would have like crushed my spirit. I would have been like, dude, why are we even doing
Maybe
this?
we don't got it. Yeah. But it's like it's super uplifting, you know, and it because I feel like if the last year, if the IE hadn't like reached out to us, we wouldn't be here. Like we probably wouldn't be doing this on our own because they were super like. They're super informative. They were super like reinforcing. They were like,
and
you should do this.
And that's the people from IE and Friends.
Yeah, IE and Friends, IE and Besties. Check them out too. And same thing with you guys. When you came on, you were like, oh, I really love what you're doing. It's super like reinforcing because it's like, maybe I should keep with this, you know, like. So because now that I'm in that journey, I would hope that if I ever reach a position where I'm considered big, that's something I would want to do. For someone who's like up and coming is like to raise them up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like
That's not what he said last time. He said
let's just gatekeep.
He said he was
I
gonna
laid out the
gatekeep.
foundation. I laid out the template.
No, he said he was gonna gatekeep.
this is my stage character.
It's gonna leak that you're like, man, fuck everyone else. I never had anyone.
You'll catch me off guard saying
I'm self-made.
It kind of parallels like when I first visited you guys. You were telling me about your clips because you guys got posted on Food's Gone Wild.
Yeah.
And like Instagram, I mean, in our experience too, Instagram has like more conservative
older guys.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So like what, like you guys are very young, entering this sphere that I feel like is the majority of the people that are doing this, I feel like, are in our later 20s to like early 30s. But you guys are like out of college age, like, you know, so like, how's that been for you guys? Like dealing
with like
haters?
The haters?
Is that what
you mean like older people?
Well, older people, I mean,
in general?
what is your listenership? Like, cause what are the reactions you're getting from like the different generations?
It really ranges. Definitely, the younger generation like is a lot more friendly and a lot more like open to have a conversation.
To a degree, kinda. I mean, I don't. Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't. I was talking to Steve about this maybe like a couple weeks ago. But I mean, I don't know if this is right or not. But I was like, I don't know when it happens when you like zero in on your fan base. Like when you get to like the point where it's like, this is mostly just people who are like into us. You know what I mean?
It's the 4th episode.
No, because I feel like we get like a big mix. Mm-hmm. Like we get that hate engagement, we get fans, we get a lot of stuff. So I've always kind of been like, is there ever a point where you reach like, all right, like this is starting to like, we're starting to hit like a groove here of like, this is generally who watches us. You know?
It's just the people who like us. No more people who.
I think early on it's the people who like you, and then later on it gets to be mixed.
Because like I was talking to you guys earlier about how I like Bill Burr, and he was talking about how early on for him, like he's like he felt that like comedy just sucks and it's not really cool until like you get people who are coming to pay to see you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I obviously I'm not sure that directly translates, but like I was just kind of like I wonder when that kind of happens, when people are like I want to see you guys, not because I feel like we're still at that point where people are stumbling upon us.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we kind of get mixed reactions. You know, so.
Yeah, because I remember one of my, I was talking to, I consider him a nephew, but I don't know what you call him. He's my female cousin's son. I guess I'll just like a second nephew or something, second cousin.
Yeah, he's your nephew.
But he's 14, and I was talking to him about the podcast, and I was telling him about the Edgar one because that one got like a huge engagement, and he's like, honestly, I think it's because people don't know you yet. Like the audience hasn't like been like like they haven't had that exposure to you, or else it would have been a totally different reaction. But because you're so new, because people just stumble upon you, they kind of just project and assume a lot of things about like what we do because of our age and the things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so that's like a little weird because our age kind of, I guess, makes the audience have a different like point of view of us. Especially because I think we're Latino and we have kind of a little bit of the California accent.
Yeah.
Do you think that, because you're so young that people, like, I guess you kind of already did say that, where people are like, why the fuck are you saying anything?
They don't.
Like,
Yeah, no, totally.
Well, because I know a lot of like the comments. I mean, at the time when the Edgar thing came out, was that they were like, "Oh, what do you guys have like your pronouns on your thing, on your bios, or like you guys probably identify yourselves as Latinx." And then I think other ones were like, "I don't think every friend group should be making podcasts." And we were just like, okay. But I think it's just like in general, I guess, with dealing with like all that, at least personally, I don't really like care about it. I'm really like, it's just funny to me. I think for the most part, I'm always laughing about it. I always think everyone's comments are pretty funny. I think that's just how I see them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like but you can see like when it's the older folks, sometimes they don't get what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And you can see that it's a very like old head mentality.
Yeah.
When they comment about something, like for example, when we talked about women issues, and they were like, well, you should like, that's what you like. I think I talked about cooking or something, and they're like, well, that is your place, like you should be doing that. And it's like, yeah, you see like the old mentalities. You know, I mean, I don't really click on anyone's profile when they comment, but like,
this is the best way to kind of see it is on TikTok is usually the younger people, and on Instagram is the older people. So for that clip that she's talking about, where she felt that the Latina idea of like you're the one who's supposed to be cooking and serving a man felt like very like strictening to you, right? Like it really weighed down on you. For that one on TikTok, that one she got like so much support from both genders about what she said. But on Instagram, there was a lot more older men being like, "You belong in a kitchen." Like there's like everything that your mom told you was for your own good, and like you could just see like
it's wild.
Yeah.
And what was interesting with that clip is that I never said as a Latina woman. I just said as a woman, this is how I felt. Right.
Yeah.
But we just happen to be, Mexican.
Right.
So, but it was just like those things that you like kind of hear. But I guess to like that is, since like Instagram is, I guess people are saying, is becoming the new Facebook, right? Where it's like it's a lot more of the older generation kind of on that, and now the new thing is TikTok. So a lot of it's a lot more younger folks,
No, and it's like, I mean, I think you mentioned it where you were like, I would like to think that people have like reading comprehension, because like I think in a couple videos, there's one that I'm talking about, you guys know, where like people were pissed at what I said.
Talk to me about this one.
And it was so weird for me, not even because of the hate. It was just more because people were upset about something I genuinely didn't say. Like I was like, I didn't say that like at all. And it was so weird because arguably that's kind of what blew us up a little bit, because like that was one of the first ones that really
Just to touch on it a little bit, from what you told me, you were talking about like you
didn't-
mentioned cartels.
he didn't want to go to Mexico.
I just made like a dumb kind of like throwaway joke, right?
He was joking. Yeah,
he was
joking.
I was
in the
genuinely
video
joking.
too, just for context, we were laughing the whole entire
I was
time.
And I kept that in the reel.
No,
like,
'cause-
to show
like-
that
So
we were
that people would
joking.
know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people probably thought like that laughter is agreeing with what he's saying.
Yeah, I just made like a throwaway joke about how like I'm afraid of Mexico because of the cartels, right?
Yeah.
And and everybody was saying that I was saying that all of Mexico was crime ridden. And it's all like that.
Yeah.
And that like I was a big wuss and
He
that
was
I was
sounding
like
ignorant.
and I
It
was
was
super
blowing
It
ignorant.
was
up
huge,
so
yeah.
It was
fast.
so like everybody was absolutely livid with what I said, and then what was funny is he brought up was like there's people who are defending us, but then eventually it got to the point where they were defending us with also something I didn't say, where they would be like, well, he's right though, Mexico is a crime-ridden cesspool, and then it was like, well, we didn't say that either.
Yeah.
So we
They-
kind of
they were saying shit
He
like,
said like, oh, he probably doesn't want to go to a shithole country.
yeah,
that's exactly what I said. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was
Yeah.
seeing, and I was like, I mean, he didn't say that either.
yeah. So it's like, it's just interesting because it's like all my life, because I obviously grew up with the internet. I've been on the other side of kind of just like projecting myself on, like, you know, like I never commented like hate, but it's fun to kind of like just be like, this guy I don't know, you know what I mean? But being on like the receiving end, it's kind of weird because it's like,
Well,
I know, like I know my own lore and stuff, but nobody. So it's, I don't know. It's
It is
interesting for sure.
it is an interesting thing. Like Ricky hasn't experienced it yet because we haven't really cut clips for him.
Yeah.
We'll
But-
see.
Yeah, it is an interesting experience when you put yourself out there on the internet and like the doors that you open yourself up to. The people you kind of invite into your space by
Yeah.
doing that.
I remember for me, I've honestly looking like all the hate comments since we started. When we first started doing reels and we got hate comments, I remember they would really like hurt me. Like I'd really feel it like right here. But like I've seen like so many that it's not even that I don't care. It's more of like I've become so like desensitized to it to where it's just like engagement. Like I see a comment as in like, oh, like cool, even if it's like you guys are so stupid, like this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm
And
like,
you're
damn,
like,
he
16
commented.
comments in 10 minutes.
Yeah, like it's to the like good part I could say is that it honestly just like you become very like it's just like another person,
Yeah.
and the internet forgets fast. The guy who commented that probably wouldn't if you talk to him in the street the next day probably wouldn't even remember he commented that.
Well, I think what I wanted to say was like, I feel like people think that like content is a natural resource.
Yeah.
Like they think that this interaction is all just like it's like they're treated as if they were like picking berries. Like that's how natural it is for them. So like the comfortability to just like be like yourself, like
Yeah.
it's wild, but people do think like, and then because I've responded to people where they're like, oh, I actually never expected you to respond to me.
Yeah.
It was like, why does that make you like, why does that
Why does
give
that
you the
change things?
comfortability to just like say terrible shit? And then when I respond, you're like, why are you taking this so seriously? This is just the internet. And like, I'm a human being. Like,
They're like, yeah,
you
why
hurt my
did
feelings.
They're like, I didn't know until you responded.
Like I said, like when we first started, I remember on TikTok, I told these guys that I would respond to the comments at first because, like I said, at first I really felt it, and literally this happened all the time. Whenever I responded, they would just delete their comments. They wouldn't respond to anything I would say. They would just delete their comments. So it like showed that like when people comment, they don't really think you exist. Like they just think it's like as if they saw graffiti on the street and they just like added something like this is dumb.
Right.
And then when you're like you come out of the corner like why'd you write that? They're like damn, like I didn't actually mean it. I was just kind of having fun.
No, definitely. I think sorry to cut you off.
No, go for it.
It's really. I always mention it, and I'm still kind of getting used to it. Is you guys I saw on TikTok before I even knew you guys, like we even met. Same thing with IE and Friends. I saw them on TikTok before I even like met them. So like going in to like meet you guys was so weird for me because it's like I had this idea of what you guys would be like, but then when I met you guys, You guys are like
Fucking nerds.
you guys are just like
People.
Like
Yeah.
you get there's no difference between you and I really. Like you have lore, I have lore. You know.
I love this.
but before that, it was just very much like I don't know.
They're
it's-
an idea, like
you guys
a
were
projection.
like metaphysical almost. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
When we
Like
talk about
That should be a T-shirt. We all have lore.
we all have lore. Do you guys have anything to say?
I was just gonna say my favorite interaction with the troll was like he wanted to make sure he had the last word, but it's on my comment section, so I just spent the day commenting back, and I wouldn't even like edge him on. I would just have a response to anything he said, like okay, sure, thumbs up, and then he's like, why are you stalking me, bro? Like, why don't you just leave the conversation? And I was like, because it's my comment section. You can leave.
yeah.
My favorite one was, I think this was really early on, but it was like, I don't know, I think you guys might remember it. It was some guy was commenting something.
Oh,
And
I know
then
what you're talking about.
He was like being a hater in the comments, and then all of a sudden he became a follower.
So what it was that like he saw one of our posts, I guess, came up on his feed, and he literally said like, this is so dumb, like this is the dumbest shit I've ever seen. And then he commented on another post that was like about us talking about philosophy, and he's like, well, I mean, like if you look at life that way, like he gave his own commentary, and then he saw a third reel that he commented on, and he's like, this was actually really interesting, and then he followed us immediately after
So
that.
he was a hater, and, then
he still
became-
follows us. Shout out to
Yeah.
that guy. He's like a fan who started as a hater.
But also, go to therapy, please.
No, but honestly, yeah, I think for me, since like the get go, and I joke with them, but I think I kind of believe it because I feel like I'm a low key hater. So I feel like when I get the hate, I'm kind of just like, it's whatever to me. Like it doesn't really bother me. Like since the beginning, like I think it also goes to like, I also used to watch like podcasting and like what is it, like daily shows, and on like I used to watch like The Real, and on there they talk about a lot about the hate that they would get because they're very well known. They were well known like people on that show, and I think I kind of just like understood that it's like, it's the internet, you know, you're kind of opening yourself to a lot of people just comment however you look like, whatever you're living. And I kind of was just like, well, if I'm putting myself out there, then it's kind of like it's gonna come back. And I think I kind of just already got used to the idea for like a good while, that like now it doesn't really like bother me as much, or like I don't really like care about it. Like how I said, like I find it funny, and like how I always tell them, like because also it did happen to me in college, because I was in a sorority. And we did a video, and we got a lot of backlash on our video. And I remember when I saw it, and I was so excited. I was like, bro, it was called Greek Wars. And we ended up on Greek Wars. Like, it had like thousands of views. And I was so excited because I edited the video. And I was like, bro, like everyone's seeing us. And like, I was just like, any publicity is like good publicity. Like, people are just watching us now, and they know about us. And like, since then, like, I always kind of still carry that. So now, like, I've told them, like, bro, it's engagement. Like, whether it's good, whether it's bad, like, they're still watching us, they're still giving us something, which is like, at least to the algorithm, it won't know if it's love or hate. Like, it's still putting us out there, you know. And I think that's why for me it doesn't really like bother me, whether it's like they're like making fun of like how I look, or like anything that we're saying. I'm kind of like, well, we know what we're saying, right? We know our own like values and our beliefs and what we're saying. So it's kind of like, I don't take it in any way, then like it's just a person on the internet just saying. And it's because like it's the internet, like they can freely say whatever they want because they know that you're not gonna like fight them or something, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got like pretty much used to it, and I really find it funny, I guess.
I think it's just pretty cool how we just went through a hater ethics class right now.
So
I guess to mentor people, you know, you go through that, you know.
So you guys, your podcast, your radio show, and your podcast kind of started from just like, you know, just casual conversations with each other.
Yeah.
So where was there a decision made to like, we're gonna talk about like Chicano issues, or is that just, how much of that is just like ingrained into just like your daily life? Like,
It's so weird. I don't know. I think we were all gonna have different answers.
Yeah. Well, because I feel like, at least personally, I feel like we're not really trying to say we're like, I guess, Chicano we're just a podcast, you know.
Yeah,
we're
I mean,
just a group of kids just talking about daily things, and it just because we're Mexican, you know. We've been Mexican our whole lives. It's kind of like comes with us.
Right. Yeah, just because your podcast name is in Spanish.
Yeah. And I think it's just like, at least that's how I kind of feel about it. I think the way we talk about things is just like how we say, like, our age, and like the things that we just see in our daily lives. Like if we see it on our timeline, like we'll be like, oh, we should talk about this. Like, this is what's going on in the world, you know, or like we feel like there's just certain topics that we need to talk about that also just happen to affect our community, you know. I don't know. I think that's just how I kind of feel about it. I don't know how they kind of feel about it.
You can go if you want.
It was so weird because I felt like when we first, there's like if anybody wants to make like content or anything, it's like TikTok is like the way to go. Like TikTok does such a good job getting your stuff out there. But what was weird is that I remember when we first started our TikTok when we had the radio show, I remember a lot of our clips wouldn't do that well. But it finally started doing well when we started talking about like our identity as being like Mexican and talking about Mexican issues. And so it was always like a weird dilemma for me because like my sister said, I don't actively think about being Mexican like my whole like 24/7 like I don't wake up thinking like I'm Mexican. Like let me start my day, right? But like what we started to notice is that whenever we talked about these issues or brought up the topic of just being Mexican is when like the TikToks would blow up. So it became, at least for me, this weird dilemma where I didn't want to become like this character, right? Of like my identity is all that I am, right? Kind of like how I feel like on the same topic of Ralph Barbosa. Like I like that his stand-up is like doesn't have to always do with his identity, but like when I saw the amount of like engagement that we got from just talking about these topics, it was like I felt compelled that I wanted to talk about it more because there was a lot that I felt like we had been doing the show for at least like almost a year, and we didn't bring up our identity at all. But the first episode we did was when then he said the thing that like blew up. And then we deleted the TikTok and we're like, well, might as well talk about it on the radio show the next episode. And that was the first time where I feel like I genuinely was just like, all right, well, I'm Mexican, for those of you who don't know. And I said A, B, and C. And then that's where the original video that like kind of put us like, I guess, on the map was when I was talking about like indigenous like identity and like.
Yeah, that's the first one that I saw. That's where I started following you.
Yeah, and what like at least is cool about that is that like it wasn't forced. I didn't come into the studio like, let's talk about our experience. I was more just frustrated with the backlash that was going on with him, and I was like, let me just say what like I genuinely have seen growing up as like a Mexican American. And I talked about how Mexican Americans have an identity crisis, about how I feel like a lot of us like are like these lost children. That's why like you see a lot of like young Mexican Americans say like the N-word because they don't know their culture. They identify more with other people. And so I said that, and like, wow, like all these people started like tuning in.
And it was funny because when he was making the reel, I was like, I feel like people just in general really like when we talk about Mexico. Yeah. And then he posted it, and then it just blew up.
Dude, I had no idea. I literally, especially because we were talking about how we were gonna delete our TikTok.
Yeah, we
were gonna give up.
We were this close. Like, we were literally days away from deleting our TikTok and starting a new one. And literally like the night after, it like blew up to like what was it, like 1,500? Yeah. And then it kept progressively getting bigger. But to add to what he was saying, it's an interesting dilemma because we never like made the decision of like this is what our content is gonna be. But we also got comments of people saying like, please keep talking about this. Where they would DM us like, we really like this, like please keep talking about this. So there's like an added like, at least for me, feeling of responsibility. Because you know what I mean. But I guess for me the goal, at least for me personally, was I remember in high school like having like a shitty day, just like how everybody has one, and then like one of my favorite YouTubers would post a video, and then my day would be a little less shitty. Or like I'd know that they post on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that would be something that I looked forward to. Right. So that was my goal, was to be like that. Was whenever we posted something, somebody out there was like, well, at least my day is a little less shitty because
Mhm.
I like their content, you know.
Right.
So it's weird because it's like I said, we never really set out to make this content. It kind of just seemed to find us a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the conversations you guys have is like your guys' viewpoints is very valuable and very interesting. And obviously, it's like a natural thing for people to gravitate towards. People are so starved for these conversations and like they want to feel like you're saying stuff that other people think and feel, but they're not seeing it like reinforced.
Yeah.
So that's why they're reaching out to you guys like, please keep talking about
Yeah.
this. And it's so funny because people make it your responsibility.
Yeah.
Like people are like, oh, you have a platform, like keep talking about
Yeah.
it, use it. And it's like,
Yeah.
dog, you could also just like, I'm not
Yeah.
special. We just, we did was like invest in microphones. Like,
Yeah, but that's why like we don't try. I guess we're kind of not trying to always just stick on that. We're still trying to stick on like other things, which I think they're it's still like working. You know, like the other things that we like talk about. Because I feel like I think another thing that we saw is that we're kind of becoming the voice for people who don't like to like talk about certain things, whether
Right.
it has to do with being like Mexican or it has to do as being a woman or like in relationships. I think a lot of people like how you said, like they have those ideas, but there's certain people who are maybe like, I think I'm weird for thinking that. And sometimes I think we become kind of like that voice of like, oh, they think the same way as me. And that's why a lot of people also reach out and they're like, please talk about this. Like, please keep talking about it. Because I feel like a lot of other, besides like our, where we talked about Mexican American, other things have also gotten comments of like, you guys should keep talking about this, or like, you guys are doing good. A lot of it has also been a lot of good reassurance of like people being like, you guys are cool, like, and I just wanted to follow you guys, you know. So that's why, because I feel like I don't know, I think personally I always saw myself, like how we said, like an outsider, and I always felt like I was always weird. And I think we kind of collectively had that, like the three of us kind of had that. I don't know. I think we had a conversation about it, and I think the three of us kind of collectively had that.
No, yeah.
And how I said, I feel like a lot of other people kind of feel that way, where they're like, they think whatever they're thinking is wrong or like not valid or like they're not being seen. And I think we've created the podcast to kind of be that of like, you're not weird, you're not different, you're not weird, you know, you may feel like you are, but you're not. Like, your ideas are valid, whatever you believe is valid, because that's who you are, you know. And I think that's why we've kind of made this and kind of stuck with it, because of also just the feedback we've gotten, and just through us, like it's been fun, and it's been cool of like everyone that we've met too. Because how you said, like how you told us that like we're doing good, and like maybe for us we were kind of like, well, you know, we're just doing it. but now it feels like we are doing something, you know. It feels like there is a purpose that is kind of being built from all of it.
It's slowly
building.
I slowly see.
Yeah,
I see it.
Yeah, that's kind of a sentiment that I feel like I was sort of always aware of. Like earlier when you guys were saying like you had no idea it blew up, I literally was like, yeah, this is going to be a thing.
Yeah, we kept saying we had no idea that this was going to happen. We had no idea that like we could. The thing is that we have so many friends with podcasts, and like none of them like have like reached the levels that we were reaching, and especially so quickly. And we're always like, yeah, no, who could have guessed? And Ryan was like, me.
Yeah, it was like and I think it's just like I have a particular perspective. I don't think it's, you know, I don't think I was more clever than they were or anything. I think it was just a thing like I'm used to being that kind of like, you know, even with my personal perspective as an autistic person, you don't hear a lot about people of color with autism. And so it's like a thing of like, but there are people of color with autism. Like I was going to groups and I was going to seminars and I'd meet people like me. And it was like, yeah, there's like more than one. And so just having that understanding through my, like a good part of my childhood, and then kind of developing into like my connection with my personal community and heritage as an adult. It was like, yeah, there's 100% like an audience for this. And I think it's something that people have been waiting for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm newer to being here, like I said earlier, but also I've been friends with these guys forever, and when they first started Isimo, like I would listen to all my buddies' podcasts. I'm supportive enough, you know. Even if I didn't listen to all of them, I would listen.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started listening to what you guys had, and I was looking forward to the episodes because, like, I'd been wanting to talk about this stuff, or I'd been wanting to hear more about this stuff myself. Like, if I'm feeling this way, how many other people are feeling this way? Like,
I think that's also part of why when we were doing Un Poquito, so we had always sort of played with the idea of bringing a third host in. But the reason we waited so long was we wanted to establish what we could do first to kind of supplement what we had lost. But I think that's one of the reasons why you were like the first person we thought of, is because outside of this is the kind of stuff we talk about all the time.
yeah.
And
And we want to maintain that, like, just to talk a little bit about Isimo. I'm not going to dish any dirt, but the thing is, what people don't understand is, like, I've been friends with you longer than I was friends with Gerardo.
Yeah.
And we became friends through doing Isimo. And people are like, oh, it sounds like it. Like, I would have never guessed. Like, you guys seem like you were friends. The people think we grew up together.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And it was like, no, we like started working together, and like that's how we got to know each other and become friends, was through doing the podcast.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's one of the reasons why we brought Ricky on, was because it was a little bit different from what you guys have experienced, where it's like we kind of set out to talk, have these conversations. Like it was the point of starting the podcast, was to have conversations about these things and to like share our perspectives and reflect on things, especially for us. Like even now, like Un Poquito, Ricky speaks a little bit of Spanish, right?
Yeah.
But like we don't speak Spanish, and so this is a no sabo podcast. Like this is us learning about the culture.
little
Little by little.
No, I was saying like I know a little bit of Spanish.
Yeah.
It's,
No, I told him. I saw the video when you guys kind of came up with that, and I was like, and I thought that was like the greatest thing. That you said.
yeah. This fool's
Yeah.
Ryan's a burden most of the time.
It was such a good moment. It was like I love that it was like the first hard high five that me and Dominic had ever
Oh, that
had
was
with
a
each
joke.
other.
Yeah, we were terrible at high fiving each other. But yeah, it, like I said, it was just exciting to see you guys, and I guess I just didn't like realize intellectually how like fresh your guys' show is. So it's like, but no, that's like super dope. Like, and it's gives me something to look forward to for sure, to like see you guys grow from there. Whatever you guys do, get it in writing.
Yeah.
We'll cut that. No.
This kind of shows the generational divide a little bit. Like for us, this is still something we really need to talk about. And for you guys, we're like, we just want to be all of ourselves. And I think that's very valid. And I think that's what I've wanted when I was younger. But it's also like, our families didn't communicate enough about this stuff. And I don't know how it was in your families, but like I feel like I'm trying to make up for that lack of communication about what we've all gone through. 'Cause, like my family's going through facing generational trauma stuff right now. And this is very relevant from my experience.
Yeah. And I think to that point, like there's a new sentiment with like emerging artists, emerging Latino artists, where a lot of people that are like in your guys' generation feel like they don't want to, not that they don't want to be pigeonholed. Like kind of like what you just said, like we're not trying to be like the Latino podcast, right? And for us, like you said, it's like, yeah, we do need a little bit more of this because there wasn't that. And now that there is more representation, it's interesting to see that how I feel like younger people are like, well, I want to be more than just this. And that is, I think it's a sentiment that we've all felt. Like I've definitely felt that exact feeling of like, I just want to be myself and not have to be not have to be defined by my identity. But I think like for us, it's interesting to think like this idea of like, oh, wanting our podcast to be for younger people, and you know, you're all welcome. I would love young people to watch our show. But looking at the analytics, like most of our people are like our age, and I think there's that I don't want to say disconnect, but there's that thing of like we still haven't seen that for ourselves so much, even though whenever we talk about representation, I always like try to bring up how like guys, like there's people that we have that we don't know about that are like super popular, but it's just because it's not they're just younger, like they're just on shows that we don't watch. They're playing music that we don't listen to, like they're doing things that we're not a part of. And so I don't think we realize how representation has grown, and I think that's honestly a wonderful thing, because it does leave room for people like you guys to come in and say like hey, we are Latino, and like we have thoughts and feelings about these things, but we don't want to be defined by that. And I think it's great the way that you guys run your show, and that you're like building as you go to figure out what you really want to do, because a lot of the conversations that you guys have just about like anything, like the other stuff that you guys have to talk about, is also very fun and funny and interesting. So it's, for me, it's like it's cool to see that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like there's actually kind of an interesting correlation between like what you guys were saying about the sort of transitioning mentality of generations, and something that we said on the podcast about the museum we saw today, because the room started off with a lot of older art and ends on newer art. And I feel like there's this similar transitional mentality where it's like you first have to understand like the self-identity and the kind of walls that are around you, and then you're breaking through those walls, and then the generation after it is just like growing up with just more of that room to grow and just understand not only where they come from but where they want to go with that. Like I think that last, looking back at it, that last portrait before you re-enter the lobby is a perfect example of someone who's the portrait was called El Verde, and I can't remember the artist right now, but we'll put it up if we can, or we'll just cut to me saying it. But I think that's a perfect example of it. That's somebody who embraces that they have like a Chicano Latino background, but also just like shows other stuff that they're into and shows like what was part of their childhood. Like I love that Pizza Steve is in that painting. It's a really good photo. And if you have time to check out that museum, you should. Also, if you want more context for what I'm saying now, check out the Patreon.
Solid.
That's always the weird struggle with transitioning between generations, is like obviously you want that room, but when you don't get it and you see the younger generation has it, there's that part of you that wishes that you had it too. And I feel like that's part of why a lot of older generation kind of are resistant and hesitant to just acclimating to watching us progress.
Yeah.
Also, to play devil's advocate for older people, even though it's super fucking frustrating when older people, well, one, it's just frustrating when they talk shit. It's like, okay, you can disagree with me, but why are you trying to bully me just for being younger? But like when I learned about the East LA walkouts, that thing that like the event that set off the Chicano movement, I kind of understood that generation more, about how people are not just I don't want to say conservative like politically, but like conservative in terms of like their dreams, because a lot of them, you hear a lot from older people, and I don't know what like the older people in your life are like, but you hear a lot of people saying like, don't do that, go to school, get a good job, like make sure you go to school. They push like college education on us so much. And for me growing up, it's like college is a fucking scam. It's like but the thing that I realized like through learning about the walkouts was like the reason why it's so important to that generation is because Mexicans and Latinos were specifically discouraged and like kept from taking classes that would allow them to enter college. Like they would, in high school, they would put them in classes like vocational training so that they could become mechanics and they could become like homemakers and cleaning janitorial stuff and like all like service industry stuff. And they were like, well, you're Mexican, you're not going to go to college, so just do this. And so they had to fight for that like right to an education. And so that's something that I kind of carry with me now. I try to, even though it's like super frustrating and I'll talk shit back, but like it's something that I try to keep in mind too, of like, okay, where's this coming from? And it's a lot of what, even just full circle talking about the George Lopez thing of like how hard it was for people to make it, for particularly people that are brown, dark, Mexican that look like him, that to make it in this industry. there's a little bit of understanding there, you know.
There is.
Yeah.
Like, even me trying to dream and doing stand-up. My mom doesn't remember this. I asked her, but when I told her, it was just going to open mics. Anybody can sign up, right? But her first instinct was, like, con cuidado, like, don't make anyone mad. And it's like, I can't hold on to that. Like, I can't do everything carefully because then I can't surpass any of this. Like, that's what you hear still. Like, you know?
Yeah, I remember that was like a big thing in the comment section whenever people saw my nose ring.
Yeah.
They tell me that I'm a horrible representation of like Mexicans and that what's the phrase? Making us look bad. Yeah. Right?
It's like to who?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I always think. I'm like, making us look back to who? Because if people don't like Mexicans, if anybody doesn't like Mexicans, they're not gonna like seeing me with my nose ring. It's not gonna change anything. If people are racist, they're gonna be racist.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no changing their mind over if I'm like the cleanest, like nicest guy ever. They're not gonna change how they feel. But like, I also think it kind of contributes to like a little bit of like a white supremacist mindset of like, oh, we gotta look good for somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, and that idea to me is like so backwards, because I think if you tell other people that, like, don't make anybody else like mad, basically,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, it means that internally the person saying that has that fear of like looking bad for someone else.
Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of, at least to me, it's saddening because it just shows me that person saying that has kind of a struggle within of their identity. And I don't know, I feel for them the same way how you're saying like devil's advocate. I feel for them. I understand why they would have that perspective because it was a different time.
There's a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And I think as I guess us as like our generation, we're a lot more conscious of it. Like, probably in like whoever these past people or these older generation is, they don't see it. They're kind of like blindsided by their trauma or whatever they went through. Where it's like us, we see it because we live with them. You know,
Yeah.
we've seen them, we've grown up with, or like. I mean, we kind of grew up knowing kind of like their background a little bit of like, we see that. And I think for us, that's why we're a lot more conscious of it. Cause now we're conscious that we're like, we want to be the change, right?
Yeah.
We want to be different. So I think that's just like a lot of what it is. And like, again, to like it's like, it's a lot of projection sometimes, you know, when people kind of call you out on something. But yeah, I feel like it's cool to see people who do want to be that change, you know, and be different and all that.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what I was gonna say. I was gonna
Yes,
say, I was like,
sir.
indigenous people like had like nose piercings, like
Yeah.
Well, it's because it plays on like how he said it's a lot of like the white supremacy and like the perfection and like the beauty. Because even then, like with tattoos, right? It's also a very indigenous practice. A lot of it is to kind of discourage, because who usually had tattoos or piercings, like a lot of like people of color, right? Historically, right? And like in these places where it was pretty much like white supremacy, it was like, no, you have to be, I guess, quote unquote clean, right? Of like no piercings, look good.
earlier.
Unseasoned like chicken. Even like with hair, right? Your hair, like it should be straight. Like curly hair is very like wild. And because that's how I felt when I got my septum, where I was kind of like, I was always scared to go to work because I felt people would judge me first on like how I looked. And then that's when I did like my research, and I was like, this is part of my culture. Like, this is who I am. Like, my indigenous people used to do this. Like, this is just, if someone, and that's when I was kind of like, if someone does say shit, like, I'm gonna be like, well, this is part of my culture. Like, are you being like racist right now?
There's no way you're being racist right now.
yeah. And that's why I was like, because I was like, I need to find ways to, I guess, back myself up of like that, because I'm kind of like, well, this is still my space, you know, and I'm gonna like tell it how it is. Of like, I'm pretty valid of what I'm doing, you know.
There's so, I mean, I didn't even take that into consideration of like, just it all like flashes through my head about like tattoos specifically, but how they've been like, you're a criminal if you have a tattoo and your body needs to be pure. I mean, that's the whole thing with a lot of like monotheistic religions, where your body has to be pure for you to get into heaven. So like, yeah, that idea is wild of like how we've been relegated to like it's a running joke where how like your people's moms or abuelitas will like get pissed if you have to like hide your tattoos and take out your piercings and stuff.
Well, thanks for joining us. We had a lot of fun
Thank you
today.
for having us.
Those
you.
great
Yeah,
moments.
thank you for having us.
A lot of cool balloons. Where'd you get those?
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah.
This guy named
Ryan speaks funny.
Ryan Speaks Funny. Yeah.
I want to say
Quack.
there's been a bit of corniness. There's a little bit of inspiration. So I'm going to have a corny one this week. If you've gotten this far, what's something that you're passionate about? Whether it's like music or art or video games, let us know in the comments. And from all of us at Un Poquito, we
Don't-
do the finger because we're making a valid point. Don't fly!